Welcome back to the Tailosive EV podcast, ladies and gentlemen. Unfortunately, we keep having family trauma and hectic events right before every podcast recording. So once again, you're only getting two hosts today. One of these days. But I think you're up
Randy.
next, Mike.
No, I don't need any more trouble in my life.
What's going to happen next week?
I got no clue. This morning I woke up and I smelled a skunky smell. And I'm pretty sure there's a dead skunk right underneath my feet right now. But looked underneath, couldn't see anything with the flashlight, but it smelled like skunk all day. So let's not hope something else happens, like a big leak in the roof that's already happened, or a few other things. Everything's falling apart, I guess, on the Tailosive Network.
The podcast is cursed. It's always like a few hours before we record, something goes wrong. Hopefully, Randy will return. It's like the post-credits scene in Marvel. Randy will return in the next Avengers. But we have, because I was gone last week, thanks for covering for me, by the way. I listened. You guys did a great job. And I love that I didn't even know you recorded without me. That felt awesome. I was like, hey, it's just self-propelled. It's like the Aptera of podcasts. It's operating without me being involved.
It's called FSP, Drew. Full self-podcasting.
Full self-podcasting. That was great. But I've missed 2 weeks of news on the show now, so fill me in. What's going on in your world, EV-related?
Yeah, I don't know whether to start with my experience with the Silicon Valley Auto Show that I got to check out right after the podcast with Randy last week.
Let's start with that. I want to hear more because I haven't heard
Let's start with that, and then, of course, we'll peel open the wonderful can that is the Nikola Badger returning.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
We
Want to
get a lot
some of
to
your
talk
thoughts,
about.
Mr. Superstar.
Yes.
But, yeah, so I guess once... It used to be twice a year. The Silicon Valley would have two auto shows, one in San Francisco and one in San Jose, if I'm correct.
Mm-hmm.
Correct me if I'm wrong, audience. But
I
used to go to both. Now we just do one, not we as in me and the wife, but I believe the Bay Area just does one Silicon Valley auto show, and they hold it in the Santa Clara area. So not a far distance. Got to check it out. What was really cool is they brought... Tesla showed up to this one. They haven't showed up in previous years, so they showed up.
That's
they
interesting.
Brought in line. I don't know if I caught a video of this. Drew will probably, or actually, I think I'll put this.
Yeah, you already agreed.
I'm editing this week. Yeah,
you're doing it.
They had a Tesla service Model S that had a whole bunch of gear in it. They had the new Model 3, the new refresh Model 3 there, I believe, in stealth gray. They then had the Cybertruck there, in which they had a very long line of people waiting to just touch it, see it, sit in it. And
they were letting people in it at the show.
What was really, I think my most favorite thing about the show was just how open and nice the people that Tesla brought to the Silicon Valley Auto Show were. The guy so there's like three people that you'd meet trying to get to the Cybertruck after waiting in this line and then waiting forever because people get into the Cybertruck and never leave because they're so perplexed by this giant polygon.
I can attest I did the same thing.
Yeah, they do the typical thing that most people probably experienced when checking out the Cybertruck at their local service or I guess showrooms is that someone would be there with an iPad trying to collect your info. In which then later that day I got invite to check out a Model Y for the night. Like, if you want to have it for like a night or two, go for it. I already have one. Sorry.
You can compare though. That might be interesting. A new Y versus your Y.
Yeah, I guess side tangent. I did get to see the was it the Midnight Cherry? I think that's the new. Midnight Cherry.
Ultra.
I got to check that.
Is it Ultra? Red. Yeah. That'd be cool if you saw Midnight Cherry. That's from Europe.
Midnight Cherry's in Germany. That's right.
Yeah.
But
either would
Ultra
be cool.
Red, I got to check out at the the showroom today. I was trying to pick up some ink cartridges, in which I'm showing to the camera, I guess, for those who watch.
From the Tesla Center?
No, so there's a Best Buy right next to it.
Oh, okay. And it's like, you guys have ink cartridges.
Well, the Best Buy's right next to it. I thought I'd stop on by and see if they still had the Cybertruck. They got rid of it apparently, but they
What?
had a ultra red Model Y, and that was really cool. I really enjoyed the exterior. The interior, I'm still lukewarm on how it looks compared to my Y, even though the piano black is it's good looking and bad looking after a few fingerprints. But besides that, the second person that you'd meet would like be there to answer any questions that you had before entering in. They would let you go in. A metaphorical gate guard, but there was no gate really. And then the third person, in which I didn't catch her name, she was really cool because I would ask her anything. She's like, yeah, go ahead, try it out. Or what does this do? And she would try to answer it whether she knew it or not. And there's one like little panel thing on the tailgate that wouldn't open. And so we asked her, what is this? And she tried opening it, couldn't. And she pretty much came to the same conclusion of, I don't know. I could look it up if you want. Or like,
wait, where was it? What part of the truck are you thinking of?
So if you take down the tailgate, in which I love the fact that you can lift it with 2 fingers or even 1 finger if you're brave enough.
That shocked me when I tried it. The tailgate was so light. I was like, wait, what? What the heck?
Right. So when the tailgate comes down, it's on the upper left of it, but not like where the joint is. Go a little bit down to where there's some of that all-weather type of material.
Okay.
And there's a tab that looks like it's showing you that it can flip up, which is probably there for if you're putting in some 2x4s or some, I guess, wooden planks or wooden sheets in there. It's probably there to flip up, so that way if it slides back, it stops.
I think I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, but no one could open it up. So we all came to the conclusion of it's a mysterious tab that is unopenable, in which that's probably something that the wife didn't like about a lot of the things in the bed, is that everything was really stiff to try to open, in which it'll become loose over time, most likely with usage. But everything was really tough to try to pull out, like the shackles, or I guess the hidden storage wasn't too bad to flip up, but it seemed very stiff in the back. Yes, exactly. The photo that you just put in the Discord chat, exactly that tab right there.
I knew exactly. Good articulation, because I could imagine it in my head, and I was like, I know what you mean. I also tried to open hatch. That. Yeah. I couldn't figure it out.
I'm pretty sure it's that for if you've got any flat objects in the bed where you need the tailgate open, it's able to flip up. But that's my only suspicion. Someone probably has an answer that they've already put in the comments, and they're waiting for me to acknowledge. But
please tell us. I want to know too.
Yeah, we can't. Yeah. Anyways, did get to actually sit in that Cybertruck, and that was fun. It was a little bit more chaotic than your experience, of course, because in your video you got to. I guess that's something that's also happened because you haven't been on the podcast in about 2 weeks or a week and a half or whatever. Yeah. You got to check out a Cybertruck, which is really cool, and I liked the dichotomy of your experience versus mine. Yours was very sheltered, isolated. You got time
I got really
to check
lucky.
Out all the different
Somehow we went there at like a dead time of day, and there was like no one there, so we just had the truck all to ourselves, and we just played around with it. And there was an employee there. Because this is on the podcast, I feel a little more comfortable sharing it, but I won't say the name. There was an employee who said, hey, would you like to test drive some vehicles today? And we already did the Model 3 refresh drive. Basically, we said, can we test drive the Cybertruck? And they were like, anything but that. And I said, that's okay. We don't really care. And he said, look, we're doing this kind of internal competition thing about which employee can get the most amount of test drives, and whoever gets the most amount of test drives gets like a free trip to Reno, and you get to take the Cybertruck around a performance track if you refer the most people. So we were like, okay, well, we got to help you win. So me and Louise both did test drives. I did a Model X refresh test drive. Louise did a refresh Model 3, so she got to try it, which is actually the second EV she's ever driven. I just realized.
She's not driven any other EV besides Pearl.
She's driven our car and that refresh 3. Those are the 2 EVs she's ever driven.
2 white Model or did she drive a white Model 3?
It was stealth gray, but yeah. So it's
Oh, I was gonna say she only drives white Model 3s. Anything else is sacrilegious.
right. So we did the test drives just so we could help that guy out.
Mm-hmm.
But he was.
Got him 2 points.
I hope he won. Whoever that guy was, I
That'd be pretty
remember
cool.
his name, but I
That's
want to
fine.
test drive the truck next. I feel like every month we get a little bit closer to experiencing the Cybertruck in its entirety. But what did you
Mm-hmm.
think of the interior overall? Were you overwhelmed, underwhelmed? Were you like, this is bigger, smaller than I thought, more comfortable, less comfortable than I thought?
So what doesn't help is it's been 5 years, or I guess 4+ years of waiting for this truck,
That's true.
and it's
Builds up
been
a
all
lot of
this
hype.
whole lot of anticipation, whole lot of hype. The interior's changed a little bit over time for the worse, in me and my wife's opinion,
I agree.
because it doesn't have the center seat and a bunch of other stuff.
Yep.
But the opinion that we had coming out of that truck after we both sat in the front and the back of it
Mm-hmm.
in this giant chaos of people, because it's not like your experience where it's just you and Louise. There's
Yeah.
a line
It's
of
very
people
busy.
waiting to sit in the front seat
Mhm.
inside the area that they allow you to check it out. So it's not even like they allow maybe about 10 to 15 people in this area.
Wow.
There was a line in this area, and then of course a giant line waiting to get into the area, but there was a line to just
Sure.
sit in the front seat, and then
Mhm.
like there was no line to like be in the back passenger seats, or I guess the front
Sure.
right passenger seat.
Yeah, who wants to go back there anyway?
Right. But waiting for my turn to sit in the front or I guess the front driver seat, being able to feel the yoke, or I guess whatever it is, the the squircle, feeling that, and then feeling the seats, touching the screen and all that. The screen's huge.
It is.
It's a lot smaller than I thought it would be in terms of interior space.
Interesting.
And
That was my
both
conclusion as well.
Both me and my wife didn't like it.
Yeah.
We felt a little bit too enclosed. I think what would benefit it is a more gray material to make it feel a little bit more spacious, but the black and also it being dark in the truck felt very enclosing.
Yeah.
And claustrophobic in a way, which wasn't a good feeling. I didn't like the fact that the front screen was tied to the rear screen. I think maybe that's an update that's coming or something like that. But every time I tried messing with it, someone else would mess with it. It didn't really feel like a good experience. It felt kind of like just, I was explaining to my buddy Neil, it just felt like a Tesla. That's kind of it. It didn't feel like a different vehicle entirely. It just, when you sat in it, whether it's in the front or back, just felt like a Tesla, which is good in some ways, but bad in others. But
Sure.
It wasn't, I didn't feel like that awestruck or exciting feeling that I was hoping for. I sat in it, and reality kind of sunk in. A little bit for the worse, I guess, for me. So it was slightly disappointing. What I took away from the experience was the positivity of everyone around it. You didn't have people trying to scratch it. You didn't have people either glorifying it or bad-mouthing it. It was just inquisitive people. And everyone had a shared curiosity for what the heck this thing is, and weren't necessarily writing it off. They were just interested in, what is this machination that Tesla's made? And I think that was probably my favorite thing about the Cybertruck experience overall, checking it out. I got to stand in the bed of it, and that was fun. I asked, like I said before, the lady that gave me, or tried giving me some of the information about the weird tab. I asked her first, like, can I climb in there? She's like, oh yeah, do whatever you want. So I'm like, oh, okay, cool, let's do it. So
that's great.
Sat in it, stood in it. It's an interesting truck. I would say it's, after all this, being able to touch it and see it in person, it's not really a truck for me. Especially with a lot of the concerns on what, of course, a lot of people have been reporting on the last week or so, is a potential rust issue, in which we had some conversation offline about it as well, about whether it's a big red flag or not. And, It
I'm
kind of
a
comes
little
to the
bit
point
more
of like,
optimistic on it. I'm a little bit more
yeah,
bullish. But I,
yeah.
I just say, where are
I'm
all
more
the rusty
bearish.
DeLoreans, right? It's not the first steel exterior. Shouldn't all the DeLoreans be rusted to death by now?
Well, what's funny is that there was a DeLorean at this auto show because they have a little section of it for classic
Hmm.
cars or tricked
Mm-hmm.
out cars and all that. There was
Yeah.
a DeLorean there, and probably my favorite thing of that auto show experience was there was a lady behind me when my wife and I were looking at this DeLorean. She says, "You know what this car reminds me of? The Cybertruck." And it was just the most hilarious line I heard the whole day. It
Did
just made my
DeLorean
day.
copy Tesla?
Right?
How did they do
Did
that?
this? Is this a custom car that someone made as an inspiration from the Cybertruck? It just, it
Right.
was great.
I do
It was
love
a
the
whole bunch
DeLorean.
of
It's a
the
great
DeLorean's
design.
beautiful. So I've heard from hosts Ryan McCaffrey of the Ride the Lightning podcast. He owned a
Hmm.
DeLorean, and he said it was a lot of work trying to keep it clean.
Ah,
So
yeah.
I think that opinion, along with some stuff that I've seen in my industry of metal
Hmm.
and stainless steel and all that, and how it responds to corrosion or I guess weathering over time,
Yeah.
makes me a little bit bearish on the Cybertruck's exterior at this point. I don't think it's as bad as the media, of course, makes it out to be, but it sounds like it's a lot of maintenance for a truck that is meant to be a truck. Or at least
Mm.
I would buy a truck meant to do things, and if it means that I always have to keep it pampered and clean so that way it doesn't rust easy because of the pores in the
Yeah.
stainless steel, even if it's a modified stainless steel that is more corrosion resistant, you still have to clean it a little bit more, I think, compared to
Well,
a
if you
painted
want it to
car.
be pretty, I guess that's the question that someone's going to have to do a long-term expensive experiment with. I want to
About
see one
100K right
person.
now.
Obviously, I won't be surprised if someone who spent, the $120,000 on their Foundation Series Cyber Beast cleans their Cybertruck once a week and it's in pristine condition. Okay, that's one thing. But we'll probably also have like a Chris from Dirty Tesla. No, he even cleans his Tesla sometimes. I want someone to get a Cybertruck and just do nothing to the exterior. No film, no wrap, no cleaning,
Mm-hmm.
and then just drive it like a truck, like normal, and let me know how it looks after 5 years. Does the erosion literally break apart the structural integrity, or does it just look a little ugly? Because I think a lot of people will just embrace the ugliness. If it's just a aesthetic problem, they'll just be like, I don't care, it's a truck, whatever, it's a Cybertruck, it
Sure.
looks the way it looks. But if it gets to the point where it's like, oh, I didn't clean it, so now the rust has spread to the point that the body panels are cracking or falling off, then I would be like, okay, this was a mistake. Tesla should wrap everyone from the factory, but of course that's going to take a lot of money, a lot of time.
Right.
So we'll see long
Yeah.
term.
That's a conversation Randy and I had last week, and
Hmm.
I think if the Cybertruck was cheaper, like around 60 or 70K, I'd be a little bit more forgiving of its potential rust, or I guess
Yeah.
pro rust nature,
Hmm.
tendency to rust easier than most vehicles. But 100K vehicle, and then it has possibly a much an easier tendency to rust. I just think, I'm
Oh
fine
yeah.
with my 2019 Ram 1500 for right now. That's got a pretty
Yeah.
scuffed up bed. I've already
Sure.
beat up that thing enough, and
Sure.
that thing cost maybe not a fraction, but several times less than what I would be paying for
Half is a
Cybertruck today.
fraction.
Yeah, I guess so.
It
Yeah,
counts.
you're right.
But I think it is a cheap truck. I honestly think, assuming Tesla eventually starts delivering the non-foundation series, those
Mm-hmm.
qualify for the $7,500 point of sale credit. That's about 72,000 right there. And then I think Tesla's constantly playing that game where they're trying to find the fulcrum point between demand and like what's the highest we can charge possible, and they're
Mm-hmm.
gonna price the Cybertruck accordingly. So like I've told everybody, the Foundation series are absolutely not worth it. they're they're
No.
basically, like you said, a $60,000 truck that they're charging 100,000 for, so you can get it early. You get all the bells and whistles. You get the FSD, even though there's no autopilot yet. You're paying
Right.
a fee. You're paying quite the premium to be one of the first people to get it, but you're not getting a good deal. I hope no one thinks they are.
No, and
But
in which I know all too well, seeing what the prices of Model Ys are today compared to what I paid for my Model Y when
mm,
I when it initially
sure.
came out nearly 4 years ago. No, it's insane. I
Yeah.
look at the Model Ys today and I think, should I have waited? And then think,
Eh.
well, the ship kind of sailed about 4 years ago. So
But you needed a car. Like your last car was dying, I think, like,
both cars. I had two cars.
yeah, they were
One
both
that I just
dying.
inherited, and then one that was my first car, and they both died nearly the same week, or I guess in the same month. They both
Yeah.
died. So yeah, we needed
So you
one,
could
and we had the money.
hypothetically play, oh, I could have saved money if I waited 4 years, but then you would have had to buy another beater car to
I
hold you
should have bought a
over.
Bolt.
And then how much is, yeah, or both. And then that would have caught on fire, burn your house
Right,
down. How much would you spend on gas during the waited period? So there's all kinds of things you can play hypothetical. The best we can do is just,
right,
what do we know now, and make the best decisions we can with the information we have. So there's no point in looking
definitely.
back on, well, if I would have known the future, I could have done so. Yeah, easy. We all should
Right.
have
I think
poured
that's
our life
probably the
savings in
situation for a
NVIDIA.
lot of people. Right. I think that's the situation for a lot of people today as well with the refreshed 3, which I did
Yeah.
also get to check out, which I thought was
Oh,
I
yeah.
had what's really weird is a 180 for 2 vehicles. I expected going into the Cybertruck being super excited, super hyped, leaving it being like, yeah, this is great. And then seeing the 3 and saying, yeah, it's not really for me. I don't really like the interior still. It's bad. Quite the opposite. I
Hmm.
came out of the Cybertruck thinking, this isn't for us. We don't really like it. We immediately went to a nearby Ram 1500 just to compare. So that way
Yeah.
my wife was in the same mindset of here's where I sit
A
and how I
local
feel in the
1500 in the area.
Cybertruck. They're right next to the Dodges, or yeah,
Yeah.
the Dodges and the Rams. And then yeah, so then she went over there and sat in, and she felt like, yeah, honestly, I like the Rams a bit more than the Cybertruck, which is perfectly fair. And Rams producing a whole bunch of other ones, like the
Hmm.
Ram Charger and the 1500 Rev that
Oh, yeah.
will be a little bit more electrified and less costly to run on a daily expense. But what I'm getting at is I got into the 3 thinking, let's just check it out.
Right.
Got in, felt the interior walls and all that,
Hmm.
touched the center console, kind of basically just fiddled with all of it like a car reviewer kind of.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, and I came out of it thinking this is a whole lot better of a product than I thought.
Yeah, me too. Me too. They really knocked it out of the park with that one. I love all the little details and the blind spot cameras and the thinner bezels around the display and the lighting, the light strip across the front. They just,
Mm-hmm.
I hope you get to test drive one soon, because the suspension is noticeably better. You can
I'd
feel it.
love to. There's about 5 of them at the showroom that I visited today, and I
Yeah.
thought, do I have time? No, I don't really. Maybe another day. But
It's
yeah,
great.
going into that one at the auto show, I surprisingly liked the denim looking material a lot more than I thought I would. It felt good. It
It does.
felt
Yeah.
somewhat resistant to any particulates or coffee or anything else that you might spill on it or get
Mm.
dirty with it. It felt nice. And then my biggest question and concern that I had going in, not physically into the car, but looking at it, was the trunk opens up, but there's no lights behind the taillights. And I thought, does that violate the typical rules, at least in California, of you need to have lights
Right.
coming from the back of the vehicle and they can't be on a moving surface, I believe.
Right.
And so I was trying to figure out how are they getting past this rule or law with California at least, and probably the rest of the US.
Yeah.
Turns out the little reflectors on the bottom are lights now. I didn't know
Right.
that until then.
Yeah. It's a little detail. That was smart.
I thought it was smart as well. It might be a little bit more costly because you have to add an LED in there. There's a little bit more complexity there rather than just a
Sure.
reflective sticker. But
Yeah.
If it means that it looks a little bit more sleek, and I don't know, I guess there might be no upside besides it looks better as a design. I'm willing to sacrifice that in terms of complexity because it looked a lot better. And
It
then
did.
it felt a lot deeper in the back as well. So,
Mm.
and then also the hood feels a lot bigger as well.
Yeah,
Uh, the
it does.
space
It
stint
sticks
feels
out more.
big, but the whole panel felt huge. So, otherwise, like I said before, I came out of it with a lot more positive experience than I did with the Cybertruck shortly beforehand. So somehow the refresh Model 3 was kind of my all-star, maybe not all-star, but my two thumbs up for the vehicle there,
Yeah,
which I was very surprised by, but I enjoyed it.
good. I think that's
Um,
probably the combo that Tesla's doing everywhere too. It's like we attract people in with the Cybertruck, and then we sell them on a Model 3 because
right. I even
Cybertruck line's too long and the truck's too expensive right now anyway. But we
mhm.
get you in a 3, you drive it around, and you go, "Holy crap, I want one of these."
Yeah, I even sat in the far back of the third row of a Model X just to see, can I
Hmm.
still even try to fit in this? And still kind of could, but it meant that the second row didn't really have good leg space, which made me realize, yeah, these aren't really third row cars, at least
No, it's a
for
crunch.
adults.
It's definitely a
Yeah.
crunch. Last time I was at the showroom too, just for fun, I got in some guy was there, not an employee, but a customer. I think he, from what I gathered, was waiting on his delivery, but he was checking out a 7-seater Model Y. And I was just like, "Do you want me to sit in the third row so you get an idea?" And he was like, "Please, yeah, that'd be great." So I was like, "You have to move." There was no legroom for the second row people when I got in the third row. So I was explaining to him that when you want someone in the third row, not only do you have to move the second row up, you have to move the front row. The front 2 seats
Hmm.
have to be fully pushed to make legroom for the second row, to make room for the third row. So it was like pretty much every seat in the car has to be adjusted to fit 7 people inside. Which is kind of no wonder the R1S is doing so well.
Right. From what I can tell, it's not a whole different world with the R1S, but it's definitely more improved
Oh yeah,
for something that is somewhat in the Model X price range
yeah, it's
for a
close.
third row.
It's pretty
Yeah.
close.
But along with that, next to the Tesla booth was Lexus. And they
Oh,
had the RZ there, which is based off of the BZ4X and the Solterra.
oh boy,
And I,
those
I
things.
saw it and I kind of pointed and laughed at first. But then, of course, I got into it, and the door latch for getting out, I think, is really smart because with like the Model 3, it's like a button or whatever on the top
Yeah,
of the
it confuses
uh,
people.
on the grip that confuses people. For the Lexus, in which I got to sit in a BZ4X as well to compare that same day. What Lexus did is they have like almost a Rivian exterior uh,
Hmm.
door handle scenario, but on
Uh
the
huh.
inside. But you press in with your thumb, and then the door opens. And it's a
Huh.
nice fluid approach of you put your hand kind of on like this bar or like grip, but like your thumb's in the natural spot instead of like being up and you have to stretch it a bit
Oh,
or use
weird.
your finger to kind of poke up. Like your thumb's basically there ready for your hand to grip the door and push it out when you open it. And I thought it was a nice design.
Huh.
Uh, so I'll share that with
Was
you
that
later.
that was
So
their contribution to the design? You
they
guys make the
actually had a
battery and the chassis. We'll do the handles.
they had a decent interior on it. It was right next to their
Yeah.
new is it the GX or whatever? Their new more off-roady feeling SUV that is
Hmm.
capturing everyone's attention. There's a whole bunch of people surrounding it as well, checking it out. Uh, but the RZ also surprised me. I thought, is
Yeah.
this just gonna be another silly? I mean, it's probably has the same. It does have the same charging curve as the BZ4X,
Right. Under
and
the
so
hood, it's all the same, I think.
yeah, it's probably under the hood all the same. But the interior, Lexus definitely put in the work to make it feel a lot more luxurious
Hmm.
and
That's good.
logical. So like that. Um, I guess there wasn't really any other EVs that I checked. I guess I walked by a Taycan and then got to sit in the
Ooh.
back of a Lucid. Lucid was there with one car.
Oh, I still
Uh,
have not been able to sit in a Lucid.
oh, okay. Well, maybe we can correct that at some point this year. But
They're building a showroom. Well, I shouldn't say where, but I'll just say they're building a
somewhere in
showroom.
California.
Yeah. They're building a showroom that I would like to check out soon.
Right.
I don't know if
Yeah.
they're gonna run out of money before the showroom is finished construction, but
They still have Saudi Mondays, so they're still
oh
probably
yeah, I
fine.
forgot.
But yeah, sitting in the back of the Lucid Air reminded us that, oh wow, you can make a lot of luxurious room for the back passengers if you're not trying to do everything ridiculous in there with the Model X or anything else or the Cybertruck. Like you could get a decent amount of room in there to stretch out. It was great.
Yeah. I think they
Um,
shrink their trunk depth by quite a bit, but the
a little bit,
interior
yeah.
cabin is a lot more roomy.
Yeah, they pretty much push the frunk and trunk areas
Uh-huh.
to a smaller volume, and then that interior cabin's the focus of that car, which makes sense. It's supposed to compete with an E-Class.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, after that, got to check out the EV6 GT from Kia.
Ooh.
It was very white on the interior and on the exteriors. It felt
Oh, that
very
sounds
space
nice.
agey.
I like the EV6 and I like white interiors, so that sounds
right.
fun.
So was it white interior EV6?
Did it have the
GT?
bucket seats?
I think so.
I thought the GTs did. They kind of cradle you a bit more.
I'd have to look at my footage again to confirm,
Mm-hmm.
but it probably did.
I've seen lots of people reviewing them. I haven't sat in one, but I like the exterior design.
Oh, sorry. The interior was black. The interior was black.
Okay.
I guess I somehow misremembered, but the exterior is white. It just looked very clean.
Yeah. There's a lot of them around where I live for some reason, but of the vehicles on the GMP platform, the EV6 is definitely my favorite.
Right. They also had the EV9 there, one on the turntable, and then
Really?
another one that you could actually get in. There was a whole family in there when my wife and I got there, so we just admired it from the outside. But they had the hatch open, and I looked inside, and I made the verbal comment, "Wow, you could fit a lot of people in here."
I've heard that's what everyone said about the EV9 is it's just like impossibly spacious on the inside, even though it's about the same dimensions externally as a R1S. Everyone said it just feels way bigger.
It was a decent size. I only got to sit in the front right passenger because, again, new EV, everyone's interested in a 3-row SUV.
I get it.
So
it's a high-end demand market, and there's not a lot of electric options for it, so they're going to sell.
Right. Yeah, so it was really cool seeing it in person. I didn't get to check out the driver's seat or the passenger seats in the back, but I did get to check out the back hatch and then see the frunk, which is like most EVs that don't really prioritize a frunk. It's miserable. It's a tiny shelf. But
all those GMP platform cars are like, you can fit your socks in the frunk.
Pretty much.
Better than nothing, I guess.
I was trying to figure out how to open it and then walked away because I couldn't figure it out while someone was in the driver's seat. And then as I was filming it, someone opened it, and so I quickly rushed over to see what it looked like. And it's just, he and I both looked at each other like, yeah, you could fit a MacBook in here, and that's about it.
To be fair, that's often what's in my frunk. Today, I drove around with my MacBook in my frunk all the time. But yeah, it is.
That's where I usually put my
depressing.
work laptop. I put it in the frunk so that way it doesn't scuff up the passenger seats or anything else in the interior.
Yeah,
it's nice.
It's a good call.
I get weird look from employee or fellow employees at my work when I open up the hood of my car and take my laptop out. They get very confused on why I put my laptop in the engine of my car.
I've had that at family events too, where we have like dessert or food in the frunk and we pop it and they think, oh, you guys okay? Like, you need help? And we're like, yeah, we're just getting our stuff.
We got the cake.
They come look over and like, oh, what?
How'd you fit a cake in there?
You fit the brownies in the oil pan.
Right next to the 12 volt. Yeah.
It's great. I love frunks.
Yeah.
I'll miss it on the Aptera.
Yeah. I guess so. Yeah, that's right. It doesn't have a front.
No.
But seeing the EV9 in person was just as exciting as I thought it would be. So it met expectations there.
Good, good.
Shortly after, a huge nosedive, of course, was seeing, in my opinion, the VW ID Buzz. They had it fenced off so no one could touch it, but they had all of the doors open on it. And I was hoping to be impressed by it in person. It gave me the same emotions that I felt looking at it online. It was very much, why? Why?
I can't believe they still don't let you touch it. It's been out for so long, hasn't it?
In Europe, but not in America. And I think
what are they worried about? Like,
I don't know what the difference is with this. It has a leg. It's a seat extender in the front, so you can allow more support for your thighs, I guess. So your legs are
I did see that.
More supported.
That's cool.
So maybe they're just worried that people would mess with that. Or I guess the door, or people trying to open the charge port and then someone sliding the door open and crushing that door. I don't know if they
that is a really bad design.
Yeah,
I will admit.
Or anything else with it. They had everything open so you could see how elevated it is in the back as well. Yeah, they had like 2 bins there so you could like store stuff, I guess. Or whatever.
Yeah.
I was still unamused by it, unfortunately. It just wasn't my cup of tea. It also has, I think what probably is my main problem with it is that they're treating it like a crossover or just like an SUV, or I guess more like a crossover.
Well, it's kind of built, I think it's on the same platform as the ID4. It's basically like a really modified ID4.
Yes, but the nice indication that they treat it like the ID4 is they've got one of those cargo covers, like the things that you could pull out. Or at least on the Y, it's like a panel.
Parcel shelf, whatever that thing is. A
parcel shelf, but some of them are soft, so you can't put stuff on the parcel shelf, but it goes underneath, so it's covered. They had one of those in the ID Buzz, in which they didn't have the third row open. It was
weird,
positioned downward, and if it was open, then the third row would just have a parcel shelf cover right in their face.
Yeah, that doesn't make sense. Weird.
And then even with it down, it still didn't really make sense because it has to go the rest of the vehicle back. So you're covering the third row and then whatever's left for storage in the rear. And it just doesn't vibe with me. I think what they should really do for one of the California or I guess the U.S. market options, but specifically make it a California-esque option, kind of like with what they've done with the Mach-E, having a California option.
Oh, yeah.
Is doing the typical, or I guess maybe Santa Cruz trim, being they delete the second row, they only leave the first and third row.
That would be cool.
Like what its not predecessor, but what it was in the past.
Yes,
which was the original, that kind of hippie van lifestyle surfer dude aesthetic that I never have really experienced, of course, because I'm not really a big surfer and I'm not a hippie either, at least not from these long locks. You probably can't guess yet.
We'll get there.
Yeah, we'll get there eventually. But it just doesn't vibe with me, unfortunately. I think you maybe would have enjoyed seeing it in person, but you couldn't touch it at all. And
that would disappoint me. Especially, I can understand not wanting to touch it when it's like a brand new, like unreleased, but this has been out for a while. And I don't understand why we're still in the era of like, I was mad how long it took us to touch the Cybertruck. It was like people had already taken delivery. People were making YouTube videos. It was like, I'm not going to discover something that you didn't want me to discover. It's like, as soon as the press has had it for a while and everybody knows about all the little nooks and crannies and stuff, it's like, why be so selective? And if they are, it's probably because they're worried you're going to break it, which is a sign it's not a very good product. If we can break it within a couple hours at a event, then it's probably not going to last a couple of years, which is what people would expect the bare minimum to be for a vehicle that you'd buy and own. But yeah, I agree with you. It'd be smarter if they had like a cargo variant they teased. I don't know if they're releasing it, but it didn't have any seats in the back. And I was like, see, something like that you could modify and put a bed or a
Mhm.
desk back there and make it all modular. I could get into that, but the idea of just bolted down, crossover seat layout is like, yeah. And that charge port that gets hit by the door is pretty dumb as well. I can't believe that the software allows for that to happen, but it's VW, so can't act too surprised.
It can be a mixed bag.
Mm-hmm.
But it was the for coloring, because I don't think you'll see it until this episode comes out. The coloring was the white on top and then the weird acid yellow or acid green color on the bottom.
See, you're
Which
normally the yellow fan. You're the one who
I'm
prefers.
fine with the colors. I just
Okay.
don't like the vehicle and their interior choice.
You were the Compass yellow fan.
Oh my gosh, yeah. We need more color, in which the bus is ripe for having color combinations. You could have stay with like the white color, or maybe have a white or black color option for the top of the ID Buzz.
Yeah.
And then the bottom, whatever color you want. It'll be a nightmare for the factory because they have to make a billion different variants
That's true.
you have to
It would
try
be a
to
nightmare.
figure out what gets bolted on it. But
Mm-hmm.
it would be very nice to embrace that customization factor for these again.
Right.
In the EV space, to make it just stand out that much more, even though it's already something that's very different looking compared to the rest of the market, because it looks more like a bus rather than a crossover. So,
right.
Or I guess a hot dog or whatever, a churro.
Yeah. I don't know what they were thinking. It's a little weird.
I guess to wrap this up a little bit more, the Honda surprisingly brought the Prologue to the Silicon Valley Auto Show as well. Unfortunately, they did one thing better. They allowed you to touch it, but they didn't allow you to get inside of it. So the doors were locked, but you were able to touch the exterior and kind of see what this thing was.
It's a weird way to review.
A half thumb up better than VW encircling it with a fence.
Just slam your face against the glass. So I can
inside.
touch it like this, right?
Yeah, there's a lady talking about it when we approached, but I took a video around it, and it was a dark red, so it very much looked like the Blazer that it is underneath as the,
it's a
skateboard
Blazer
chassis. It is a Blazer, but it's the Honda version of it, in which a lot of people prefer Honda over Chevy in many different aspects for whatever cars that they offer. And this, in my opinion, is probably the better looking design on the Blazer platform than the Blazer.
Interesting.
So, that's just my opinion. I guess.
I was not impressed. I watched a lot of coverage of the Prologue, and it was just it was like, this is the most car I've ever seen. It's like everything was just normal and basic, which to me is dated. I'm like, I'm sorry, maybe I'm too much a zoomer, but I like my screens and I like my futuristic minimal interiors, and I guess maybe that's not what Honda's going for with that car. They're just going for consistency. It's just what people are used to, what they're comfortable with. It's like an F-150 Lightning versus a Cybertruck, very different markets that they're catered to. But what's weird is to think of the Prologue as an EV and also the Honda Saloon concept being from the same brand. It's like the completely different vehicles. That was the one at what was it? CES, the really
your
aerodynamic
favorite design. Right.
I love that
I
thing.
What you're talking about.
I love the Saloon.
It's not going to happen, in my opinion, in that sort of design. It's going to get morphed kind of like with Mercedes, where they had the concept car, and then it just evaporated into a Honda Civic. So I guess the best case scenario, it evaporates into a Honda Civic.
I'm hopeful, just because, I mean, there were definitely a lot of stupid concept car stuff in the interior with the like, oh, the steering wheel folds away and it comes back. And I'm like, no, none of that's going to happen, of course. But the exterior, at least, in their whole ethos around, we're trying to focus on wise range or something like that. I forget. But they were like, we want to do super aerodynamic designs with smaller batteries with better efficiency. And I was like, yeah, that's great. I want to see more of that. So I know it won't be exactly that Saloon design, but I like the ethos. But if you're right and it turns out to just turn into a Civic, then I'll be very mad and disappointed.
Right. As long as it gets to market quicker than the VW ID Buzz has in its longevity of concept to production, at least in
Yeah.
America.
Yeah.
I'll be
Well,
happy.
they said the saloon was specifically for North America. They said this isn't
Sweet.
meant for overseas. So
Yeah, it seems like they canceled the Model E, or was it the E? Oh, the Honda E that they had in Europe.
Insight, what was it called?
I think it was just the Honda E, if I recall.
That thing was cute, but they never sold it here, right?
No, it was only in Europe, in which I thought was a big mistake. Even though,
and they killed it too. You're right.
Yeah, they killed it.
That's too bad.
So, I think this hopefully the Honda sedan concept, whatever it is, saloon, is hopefully a better product that they can rely on and produce for many more years rather than a brief period of, will this work? Probably not. So let's just move on after it. Kind of like a lot of different EVs that I've been looking at recently, and the longevity of what the US has had in the last 30 years. It's
right.
quite hilarious of production timelines. Sometimes it's like 2 or 3 years. Sometimes it's a month. Other times it's 7 years. And I didn't realize that vehicle is in production for 7 years. Just like the Fiat. That thing's been around for that long. Wow. Okay. Yeah. I guess to cap it off as well, got to sit in the BZ4X. It was pretty much what I expected.
You were whelmed?
Underwhelmed, I guess. Compared to the Lexus, I think the Lexus spoiled me, because I sat in that knowing that it was a BZ4X under the skin.
Okay.
But the interior was that much more striking to me than sitting in the BZ4X, and it felt like a Toyota. It felt very rubbery and plasticky with not much soul, I guess, in my opinion, or at least much pizzazz. I didn't feel excited about sitting inside of it, unfortunately.
Sure. What I will give credit to on the BZ is, on paper at least, it's not impressive. It's like okay range, okay efficiency, okay acceleration, not a ton of storage space, not a great charging curve. Everything about it is like meh, like you can tell, especially compared to like the new Prius. It feels like they put so much more time and attention into that thing. But then the BZ, they were like, whatever. It's not important. But I see them all over the place. And it is mind-boggling to me. And what I'm reminded of, that I still keep repeating, that Tesla keeps underestimating the concept of brand power. People will stick with a brand that they've had good experiences with, even if that means not necessarily getting a vehicle that on paper is the most affordable or the most practical or whatever. Honestly, if we just did a side-by-side with Model Y versus BZ, I bet the Model Y wins on almost every category. I bet it's faster. I bet it has better range, better efficiency. It's probably cheaper. It has better charging curve. I think across the board, the Model Y is a better product. And yet a bunch of people still buy those BZs because they like Toyota. They're known for being reliable, and people have had good experiences with Toyota. So they're just like, that's what I know. That's what I'm going to stick with. I'm like, okay, all the better to you. That's to their advantage.
Two surprising responses to that you brought up. One, they had the new Priz right in front of the BZ4X. And so I've sat in it before, but I got to sit in it again.
Oh, okay.
When I went, and the interiors are quite strikingly similar, which is funny.
Oh, really?
But I love the exterior of the Priz a lot more than the BZ4X, which seems kind of weird saying, but I think the Priz is in its nice renaissance of its life.
Seriously,
the Priz is cool looking rather than it's that weird.
It's gorgeous
compact consumer car that no one really likes. It looks amazing. It looks more modern than it's ever looked.
I really hate the fact that the Prius is a hybrid still. Like, if that was a full EV, I would be so much more into it. But I get it. That's what the Prius is kind of known for. But I see them a lot. They're pretty common around here too. And I'm just like, I mean, I get on paper the argument of, well, some people want to go really long between stops and they want that huge range, but I'm like, that's not what people are using it for. We know that. Everyone's just driving it to work and back, and most people, at least statistically, even with plug-in hybrids, they tend not to
Mhm.
plug them in. They tend to just treat it like a gas car with really good fuel economy. So
Right.
I'm still like, yeah, I get on paper what the advantages are, but I don't think that's what most people are buying Priuses for, personally. I maybe like 20% of Priuses are being used for like fast long distance road trips, but a lot of people are just like, well, I don't want to learn batteries and charging. That sounds hard. So I just want to keep buying gas, but I want a car that's going to go really, really long distances between gas pumps.
Hmm. Right. And then the second thing, upon your initial statement, I
Hmm.
agree with the frequency of seeing BZ4Xs on the road.
Yeah,
Surprisingly, it's been a huge boom, I would say,
me
in
too.
terms of me seeing this in the Bay Area. It went from maybe I don't know, every 50th car, maybe every 100th car. Yeah,
Hmm.
probably maybe every 100th car was a BZ4X or a variant of it, whether it was
Yeah,
the Solterra or the Lexus RZ.
right.
Recently, every single time I go out, it's somehow more. Well, it makes more sense because it's less costly. It's more frequent than I'm seeing F-150 Lightnings and Rivians. They are
Yeah,
taking over the roads. People are
yeah.
realizing, oh, Toyota, Subaru, and Lexus are making an EV
Hmm.
crossover. I'll buy
And I think it's
it.
purely a brand thing. I think that's the only
Yeah.
reason those are selling. I don't think it has anything to, because those cars are kind of lousy in my opinion. It's like the most meh car ever, but because it's a
Hmm.
Toyota or because it's a Lexus or because it's a Subaru, oh my God, I know so many Subaru cultists.
Hmm.
They just love those things to death. There are so many people that are just like, I don't care what you show me. I'm a Subaru owner, so I will continue to be a Subaru owner.
Hmm.
They love those things.
Right.
Again,
Yeah.
brand power. It's
It's all
strong.
about brand power.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. One or I guess there's a few other EVs that were there that I didn't really check out or was interested in looking at. The newer design for the Kona and the
Oh yeah.
oh goodness, the Hyundai, was it the
Ionic
no, so yeah, the
or
Ionics were there, Ionic 5 and Ionic 6. uh is it Hyundai Kona, and then the Kia Niro. The Niro
oh
was
Nero.
also there,
Uh-huh.
both of them in their new designs. And I believe it's the Hyundai Kona, with its new light bars, just a single LED light. It doesn't
I
have
just
like
saw
double
one.
layer or anything
I
like
just
that.
drove by one right before I
Looks
got
really
home.
cool. I sometimes mistake it for a Mercedes sometimes, but the
Yeah.
design looks really good. It's
I
just
like it.
not interesting either on paper, or I guess the design's great looking, but it's not over the edge for me in terms of I want to look at this more. It's more of,
Sure.
oh hey, it's the Kona,
It's
awesome.
slightly more original, I would say, as a exterior.
Yes, it's had time, to be fair. It's been around for I think at least 5 years now,
Yeah, it
probably more
has.
than that.
It's
So
been a
it's
minute.
had some time to try to carve out what it is, and
Hmm.
engineers have been able to go from we need to get this product out to let's play with this thing for a while. So
Yeah,
yeah, didn't get to
agreed.
check that out, but got to see it and thought it was pretty cool. Otherwise, I think that pretty much covers all the EVs that I checked out,
Cool.
barring some other stuff like the Mustang, the new Mustang, not the Mach-E, but the
Oh.
seventh generation. My wife got to check out and she enjoyed it. I sat in the back of that thing and that was terrible, but
Terrible.
surprisingly, you can sit in the back of those still, kind of. But yeah, that was my experience at the Silicon Valley Auto Show. I hope you
Nice.
can make next year's,
Yeah, I
because we had a
want
lot of
to.
stuff going on last week. I think you'd
Oh,
enjoy it.
it was so hectic, but
It
I
felt a
wanted to
lot more
go.
exciting this year, though.
Mm.
I think the last 2 years, or at least last year, yeah, probably the last 2 years, they moved to
Hmm.
the new location, Santa Clara, and it's a smaller area, and also a lot of manufacturers dropped from the
Mm.
list that would be there. So GM wasn't there. Uh,
Oh,
Technically,
interesting.
they were there with the Cadillac Lyrics for test drives, but there was nothing on the show floor to look at or touch.
Oh, interesting.
No
There was a
Chevys, no
lyric at
nothing.
my Costco, which I got to check out up
Nice.
close. What's similar to your experience? I could touch the exterior, but not the interior.
Right. Well, they just didn't even have it on the show floor in general. But
Mm.
yeah, GM wasn't there. Subaru wasn't there.
Oh. Hmm.
Mazda wasn't there. And
You'll have to make another chart like your NACS chart.
yeah, I have
Everyone
to make like
included.
next. Everyone that was, they tell you on the invite,
Yeah,
in general, who will be there. Like Ford was there, but
that sounds like fun.
it was somehow a lot more exciting this year than it was in the past 2 years, where it felt a little bit downgraded, because it was. They downgraded from the San Jose Convention Center, which is huge. Like,
Mm.
big events can happen there, and they fill that place with a whole bunch of cars. But because of COVID and a bunch of other stuff, they've probably seen that attendance has deteriorated a bit. So they downgrade, and also is pretty costly, I'm sure. So it made more sense to go to the Santa Clara Convention Center. And
Yeah.
it was a lot more positive this time. So I'm crossing my fingers that next year's just even more bigger, and it probably will be with more EVs on the market.
Yeah.
And hopefully they allow you to touch a few of them, like the Prologue and the ID Buzz. But
Let's hope.
yeah, it was
Cool.
a good time. Something I did want to bring up with you is that you became a little bit either more or less popular in the YouTube verse, specifically in the EV YouTube verse.
Yeah.
Where you got mentioned by Heavy D, a well-renowned guy, in which, as much as I don't know much about Heavy D, and if you're listening to this, Heavy D, don't mean to be rude to you at all, but the only thing I know about this guy is he's pretty much like Matt's Off-Road Recovery, another YouTuber who basically does like off-road recovery content. But Heavy D, I know, has a lot of money. And so I think 3 videos I've seen is he had a huge like tow truck wrecker. And another one, he was testing out a side-by-side EV, basically a Model 3 pack inside of a 4x4, like a dune rider and all that. And then maybe 1 or 2 other things. But then there's this video of him showing off to the world that he somehow got the Nikola Badger, the Nikola NVTs, and the Wave Runners somehow from them, in which I guess he has some affiliation with it. I'll let you maybe brief people who haven't watched this or aren't up to the know.
Well, to be fair,
I took my own notes as well.
I don't know if he edited the video. It's entirely possible. It's a very big channel with millions and millions of subscribers. It's possible that they contract out their editor, their editing. In fact, not only possible, it's probably likely. And very likely the editor that they hired pulled my video because they needed to find doubtful content of Nikola. They didn't have to look very hard, but they basically just went in YouTube search and looked up Nikola Badger canceled, and I discovered that as well. When you look up Nikola Badger canceled, I'm one of the first results. So they probably just downloaded that video and spliced it into their montages. 2 separate times I showed up in that video, which I'm honored, by the way. I'm so grateful, just because I thought this whole Nikola thing, at least with Milton and all, was dead and buried. I thought this whole topic was kind of over. And honestly, since Milton left and Heavy D has not been involved with Nikola at all, I thought Nikola was actually doing impressive work. Like, they were delivering trucks. They actually just recently, I was following the company Twitter. I'm like, how is Nikola? The real Nikola, not the, made up Nikola. And they actually just delivered recently their first hydrogen fuel cell powered truck with up to 500 miles of range.
To interject a little bit, I think this is all very timely and coincidence. Because on last week's podcast, I was talking with Randy about this, about X, who seems to be Lordstown reincarnate, versus Nikola, and how they rank against each other. And I was speaking in favor of Nikola a bit more, because at least they moved on. And they decided that's probably not going to be profitable. this is most likely the path that we should go, and we're still passionate about this type of transportation energy, and we're going to try to attempt it and see how it goes. And which I think is very admirable. Even if it ends in failure, they tried, and which I like a lot more than we're just a copy of
Right.
all the EV companies that you know. So
That's true.
At least that's the message I was trying to convey last week, if it didn't come across, that I wanted to add in this as well. But it's very timely that a few days later, the Badger's relevant again. And Nikola is now
I can't believe we're still talking about this thing that we all thought was dead because Nikola told us it was dead. But the important context to also keep in mind is Nikola, the company, at least according to their Instagram and their Twitter, has not promoted or endorsed the Heavy D video in any way. They have not said, like, hey, check out Heavy D. He's going to make the Badger happen. So I'm fairly confident that whole video was done without the knowledge of the actual Nikola Corporation. I believe all that Nikola was aware of was they had their prototypes, and for several years, Heavy D and his lawyer, Cole, whatever his name is, negotiated to buy up the old prototypes that were never unveiled. And
I don't think Cole's a lawyer. I think he's a partner in the Nikola Badger initiative. And I think he played a decent role in trying to acquire all of these, I guess, defunct Nikola projects, from the Wave Runner to the Badger and all that.
Which so he has a lot of money.
I think that is well known with his content and what he builds. It's a lot of money pumped into these really big machines that have a very likely tendency to break if pushed in a certain situation.
I personally think it was a horrible idea to buy those. And I think the fact that Nikola was comfortable selling them says a lot about how Nikola feels about the programs. That they're willing to just sell them to some random YouTuber. Well, I guess not random.
Not some random. He was affiliated with the project because he was friends with Trevor.
Right. But I doubt Nikola's comfortable with the way he's structuring the video. I don't think they're okay with it.
I'm sure that they know of the video. I'm sure that he disclosed that he was going to be showing them off. But I'm sure part of that discussion was Nikola saying, we're not going to acknowledge you. Or as far as we can tell, and like you said, Nikola hasn't commented on it at all, in which they probably will in the next quarterly earnings.
He blurred out the logo on the Badgers and put tape over all Nikola badging, which is confusing because they say the term Nikola like a million times in the video, in the title. So they're still calling it the Badger, but then in the video he says, this isn't affiliated with Nikola. It's our new company that we had to form in order to take delivery of these. So I don't...
It's most likely some legal jargon in there of showing your brand versus talking about a brand. We could talk about Tesla all day, but we're not out here promoting, I don't know, what's a defunct... I can't even think of any defunct Tesla projects because we don't really know of them as much, but I guess battery swapping. We're not here with Tesla's battery swapping technology and flouting it with the Tesla logo on it, but we can talk about it. So I think it's probably in that realm. I think it's funny seeing that this video has, as of recording this podcast, 1.2 million views, which is a funny aspect, probably for you. That
that is hilarious.
At max, I guess I should say, 1.2 million people have seen your face, at least in the first bit of it, of you saying.
Yeah, I'm in like the first couple seconds of the whole thing. So it's pretty likely that that video has gotten more views than any video I've ever made, and I'm in the first few seconds of it. So it's fun to be included in this saga. Like, the saga continues, you know, like now we're arguing Trevor Milton is actually innocent and didn't do anything wrong. And it's like, oh my God. Even after, I thought it was hilarious that he said Trevor's appealing the case and the appeal
Hmm.
process is going to go through. And I was like, that doesn't mean you're innocent. A-
No,
Appeal doesn't mean innocent. And as someone who served on a jury recently, I can attest how difficult it is to get a jury to actually agree on a guilty verdict. At
hmm,
least in our current justice system, it is very much you are innocent until proven guilty. The burden of proof is on the prosecution. So if they
sure.
got 12 people to all agree on guilty, the evidence was pretty clear. And assuming that he gets it appealed, which he probably won't, it'll probably be denied. But even if he did, that doesn't mean the verdict is now innocent. It means that it has to go to trial a second time. It means you have to redo the trial. So that
Interesting.
he was explaining it like, well, because Trevor's appealing the verdict, therefore he's innocent. And I was like, that's not at all what that means. And publicly, we have evidence of him lying. It's not like some insider information we had to find to prove. It's like most of the evidence the jury looked at was probably YouTube videos that we've all
Hmm.
seen.
Right. Well, also, there's a lot of other stuff behind the scenes that isn't just YouTube videos, but digging into all the evidence against at least the former CEO of Nikola Trevor, of Nikola Motors being Trevor Milton.
Yeah, it
Uh,
doesn't look good.
that's probably what they based their accusations and evidence on. And what's probably, I think, tough in this scenario is that it's very much shown in photos and also by Heavy D's, uh, I guess, the way he talks in the video. He and Trevor are friends. So it would be slightly disingenuous, and also it'd be a bummer for your friend to go out in a video and say, "Oh yeah, he's guilty, whatever." Uh, Instead, it's someone that he probably cares about and that he somewhat loves in some regards. So I'm
I think he
sure
wants his
he also
shares
has.
he was promised. I don't think I think you're giving
I
him too much credit personally, but
maybe probably the business decision of going onto a project and not being paid up front or having some agreement on payment throughout the process versus we'll make it and then decide on payment later is most
well, he
likely
said
not the
you'll get
best
your
approach
shares
for
when
him.
the Badger's delivered and you'll get your big payout. And now he realized, oh crap, the Badger's never going to get delivered. How do I get paid?
Right.
Uh Maybe if I get on the board, I can get it in, but
Yeah. I think
it's
something
weird.
that it is weird. Something that actually excites me is we have an answer to a tweet that Nikola Corporation sent out in August of 2022, where they had a whole suite of representatives for their dealer sales training or whatever. And in the corner of the photo is a blue Nikola Badger. And I very viscerally remember that moment of,
Mm.
wait a second, the Badger's real? And we're not acknowledging this, that it's in the room. The Badger is in the room, and we're just not going to talk about it. Okay, interesting. And then finally, uh,
I
Heavy
mean,
D shows off in the video that the blue Badger is a real, tangible thing. Who knows if it runs or doesn't? He claims that it does.
no, the
And
blue
whether
one he
that
said does not run.
no, he says that there's software issues, if I recall from the video, making it not run. That
The
they need
issue
to.
is that there's no software.
Well, I think that's the hard part about this is it's his word against whatever the reality or what other people's opinions are on the, I guess, the utility or I guess the status of these vehicles and if they
Mhm.
run or don't. Like you mentioned in your video, he doesn't show the wave runners working.
We've
He
never
just
seen
has
a
them
moving wave runner ever
right. And we did see the NZTs moving, but slowly in a parking lot.
in a circle.
Right. One with a whole bunch of machine guns on it, which I
Yeah.
hope are fake. I didn't get to look at them close enough.
I'm
And then we
sorry.
only
The
got to
reason
see.
I had to react to it was because it made me laugh so much. It felt like the whole
Mhm.
video was written by GPT, like
Interesting.
never getting that specific and very carefully choosing your wording around everything. Like, oh my god, those wave runners, they are so cool. Someone told me they run for a few hours,
2 hours, I believe. Two
but
or two and a
I
half.
don't know. He
Of
straight
course,
up
we
at
don't
one
know.
point said, "Don't ask me what their capabilities are because I don't know." His
Right.
words.
My speculation in a lot of the video when I was watching it was he says that they run, like all these products were ready in 2020 for unveiling and that they're prototypes, so of course they're not production ready, but they do run in some extent, in which that's
So does the
that's
Avatar car.
great. Sure, I guess a few
It's
things
about
that I
as
have a
real as
problem
the
with
Avatar
that
car.
is we don't know that they were running in 2020 because we don't have any video of it.
No.
There's
And why
only
would they
Heavy
not
D's
unveil
word that
them is my bigger question. That was never answered.
there was some higher level decision with the board probably deciding is the Badger something worth going forward with, along with all these other ideas that we came up with, and with all the stuff going on with the Hindenburg report and
The
how
fraud
emotional
charges.
yeah, well, I guess, and how emotional Trevor Milton was being on social media, on Twitter, on Instagram, whatever else.
Yeah, he
It
talked to
wasn't
you all the
really.
time.
He sent me a message. We make fun of that a lot, and
I
it's
like how we're
funny.
both now involved in this
Well,
company.
mine was simply, "Hi, don't think you'll probably read this, but you have a lot of products."
Yeah.
And do we have dates on them? Are they coming out? Like, I'm interested in like all these other products that you apparently have in the pipeline. And his response was very emotionally jumbled
Yes.
and very, I
Very
wouldn't say
defensive, I would say.
I think defensive is probably the right word. Is that he cared about his company and really wanted to get a whole lot of profit out of it, so that way he some goal that he had. I'm not too sure what his goals were, but
Pump
what
and
I've gotten
dump.
from this, possibly, what I've gotten from this video from Heavy D is I'm excited that the Badgers exist. Like, it seemed very much like here's some concept images on the site and that's kind of it. It makes me more happy that they are tangible objects, whether they actually go 300 miles on battery and then another 300 miles on hydrogen. Who knows? Probably not, because they're a prototype.
Yeah.
But at least the fact that there are prototypes that exist just makes this whole situation a lot more interesting for what I guess Nikola's checkered past has turned into at this point. What spotlights, or I guess pinholes, in this opaque bag that has been Nikola's beginnings, what was there? And seeing that these two Badgers exist, whether they were in this state in 2020, or they just got to this state recently, since Heavy D probably has had some time to work on them, and maybe has added a few things or not. We don't know, because again, his word against ours, or reality, or anything else. We don't know. But I'm just glad that these prototypes exist in general, because it's a very weird situation with the Badger. And it's just a really strange way to frame the resurgence of this make and model that we thought was done and over with. It was a funny, like, hey, remember that? Oh yeah. That was weird.
Yeah, I will say it's a fascinating chapter in a really interesting story. It adds a season 2 to the Netflix documentary Making a EV Company.
Tiger King Part 2, but it's Nikola.
It's
or
like,
I guess the Badger.
It's not exciting in any way, shape of like, this is a cool product. I don't think it's a very good idea as a product, and I don't think that this video makes the Badger more likely to come out to be something you can actually buy. Especially based on the fact that the actual company who made them doesn't want them and makes no public endorsement and required him to cover up the logos and cover up the names and stuff. So I don't I don't think this gets it anywhere closer to actually delivering. Even so, I don't think most people would want it. Hydrogen's, in my opinion, still a horrible idea, but it is a fascinating, like, just chain of events that is like, oh my God, this is still going. Like, it's still progressing. After all these years, there's still more to the story that we thought was long gone. Um, but my guess is they didn't show the prototypes because they probably weren't ready or didn't do half the things they wanted them to do in time. And more importantly, they realized that it didn't make financial sense for the company to get into those fields. Like it wasn't that wasn't in their future. And around that time they canceled the Badger was also close to the time that Trevor Milton, I think they said he voluntarily left, but I'm pretty sure the board pushed him out and they just, to save face, claimed, oh no, he chose to leave. I don't usually, they just say that when they're trying to look good, but um my guess is Trevor was throwing out all these crazy ideas. We're going to do this. We're going to do this. We're going to do this. And the actual board just went, no, let's just focus on trucks, semi trucks. And most of what they've delivered thus far until like just a couple days ago was all electric trucks that required no hydrogen, which makes far more sense, in my opinion, and is far more cost effective, probably from a mass production standpoint, and not having, you can rely on third-party infrastructure already. They used CCS ports and they could DC fast charge, and they mainly were using Bosch parts anyway, so they relied on a lot of contract manufacturing. But it's funny to see him in that same breath go, we need to restore Nikola back to its former glory, and the energy that Nikola has now, it's just not what it used to be. And it's like they're delivering stuff now, like they're actually not talking up a storm like Trevor did, but they're actually delivering things, and you're claiming we need to go back to the days where we were scamming people. It's like,
yeah, I'd say in today's day and age for Nikola, it's more exciting as a business than as a consumer product, because no one's really going to care about a electric or hydrogen semi because they're not actively driving those. They see them on the road maybe from time to time, but otherwise they're not super passionate about that unless it's the Tesla semi, and then people go crazy over it.
I did see one finally, by the way.
I believe you mentioned you saw the Pepsi one, which good for you.
Thank
but
you.
The Cheeto one is better.
It is. I agree. And I didn't know what I was looking at first. I just went, oh, that's a really, and I just saw the big zero emission on the side. I was in an F-150, actually, not my Tesla. And I was just like, huh, okay. Moving on.
Wow.
Anyway.
So, yeah, I think Nikola's in the position where business-wise, it's more exciting on whether they'll make a profit or not. And they're trying to make hydrogen transportation work for their fleet, even though they've had some issues with their battery electric fleet so far with a few fires. But otherwise, it seems like they've done, it happens, I mean, electric cars.
That's a really big battery to catch on fire, though. That's like 750 kilowatt hours.
If I recall, I took a note on it as well. It was a leak in the battery coolant lines. So it was some mechanical fault. And whether that was done maliciously or someone messed up on a drawing and or the assembly process of it, who knows? But they're learning. I think that's the most important thing that I want to highlight for my excitement towards the company, is that they're learning how to be a real company that isn't just kind of like one that's putting out ideas. Because putting out ideas is great. It's delivering on those ideas is the important part of the process. And Nikola in the past was all about, here's all our ideas, kind of like what you see with Alpha Motors or some other ones. Alpha Motors comes up first in my
I think they have a prototype now. I saw.
That's wonderful. Please do more with
but I
it
know what you mean. They
production.
launched their website just with renders and took reservations, and I always think it's a little sketch whenever a company just doesn't even have a functioning prototype and takes reservations. He kept using that clip from my video like that was wrong. I was like, well, if you don't show us the prototype, it may as well not exist. Like, that's the same thing as not having one.
And that's another thing, is it's the boy cried wolf in a way.
Yeah.
He might know more information than we do, in which he did, because he was affiliated with the project and helping make these prototypes. But again, he didn't really, if I recall, he didn't mention anything at the time, and obviously he didn't because
couldn't.
Nikola didn't want. Yeah, Nikola didn't want to. They told him to shut up, and so it's
I think
tough
that was wise. I think that was a good idea.
What I do find also hilarious is that a lot of this information that he said in this video, he's saying this is the first time I'm talking about it, or was claiming that like I'm finally allowed to divulge it because I've got custody of these vehicles now with my Ember EV company or whatever it is.
Right.
But I believe he was it in a 2022 interview. I forget who was talking to, but he was on a podcast where he was talking about what went on with the Nikola situation, where he was claiming that Nikola and Tesla were neck and neck, and that saying that Hindenburg released a report that wasn't true, and lawyers told him to shut up and didn't pay him a penny at all, and was saying during this time that he apparently was saying to people that the Badger program wasn't dead. But again, this is a very weird way to talk about the Badger and Nikola in this form. It felt very emotionally charged and defensive, which is fair because it was his project that he was very passionate about and was working with a friend on and was hoping that it would take off. And it didn't.
I don't honestly see any proof in the video or in the original. I remember that time Heavy D and Trevor Milton did that like collab video or whatever. They didn't have the truck prototypes in that. Would have been a good time to show it when you start taking money. But they're both just talking about what their trucks can do. And Heavy D just goes, my truck can tow this much. And Trevor goes, our truck can tow this much. And that was all it is. And then in the video, he doesn't get very specific about engineering details. He just kind of says, trucks have a skateboard and there's a bottom half and a top half. And I was like, I don't think he's an engineer. I don't think he has any expertise in like, as a consultant for Nikola, like he worked with Nikola on the Badger. I'm fairly confident it's not much more than just, here's the specs it should have. How does it get those specs? I don't know. I just think it should do these things. And in my opinion, that's not, I'm sure he was promised something by Trevor because Trevor promised everything. But in my opinion, that's not like very valuable insight to just throw specs out there and say, okay, some other company needs to make that happen. Like, like that's not valuable. Like I wouldn't, if like Aptera was consulting me and I went there and said, okay, your next car needs to do this and it needs to do this. And I'm no engineer. I'm not telling him how to do any of it. I'm just saying, I want it to do that and that and that. I wouldn't, I wouldn't expect to be reimbursed for just throwing specs at a wall. Like, I don't get the collaboration part or working with part because there's really no evidence that much actual engineering work was going into it other than just, here's our dream specs.
Yeah, I think to be fair to Heavy D, his YouTube is very much a resume of what at least him and his garage or him and his friends can achieve with recovery vehicles that have giant treads. I think recently he put out a video of the Cybertruck that they bought.
Yeah.
And put some big treads on it. I didn't watch the video, but I saw a picture of it and thought, well,
the Tesla
hilarious.
Cybertruck account reposted it. The official
Maybe
Cybertruck
that's where I
Twitter.
Saw it. Yeah,
but
so
modifications are very different from mass production, though, right?
Oh, of course. I perfectly agree with that. Mass production is a whole different beast. Being
very
able
different.
to do the same thing, maybe comparing it to Ford is a little bit unfair, but at least being able to reproduce somewhat the same product on an annual basis at a certain amount of volume is a tough thing to
Any
do.
volume,
if it's
really.
well, you could make one a year. but a volume that is somewhat substantial to
Yeah.
what that product is in that market is a tough venture. And so for him, I think he specializes with custom builds, whether it is trucks with tracks attached to them, or a school bus that's lifted a giant amount, or a big off-road recovery system.
Those are perfect for YouTube videos.
I know he can do that. It's going to gain views. It's going to be a somewhat, I think it's a mechanical feat is what I'm getting at. He's great at the mechanical, fascinating builds. But in terms of a mass-produced vehicle, like what it seemed like he was alluding to, that the Nikola Badger should be, or maybe it'll become the Ember Badger or something like that. I would love to see what his plans are for mass production, and who will he partner with GM or like someone else who has the capacity, because even with companies like Arcimoto, they're showing that it's a tough business, and it's not just being able to build it, but have the interest of the consumers, or I guess the market, to buy it is a whole other factor.
It's near impossible to get all those things right. And on top of that, you want to bring hydrogen into the mix. That's, I guess, the harder part to me about believing this is actually genuine interest, is he keeps arguing that we need cleaner vehicles, or we need more efficient vehicles. And I'm like, if you cared for a second about efficiency, hydrogen would not be in the conversation, because not only is it complicated, like we see with Rivian, get a bunch of money together, get an assembly line together, mass produce it, got to crash test it, get approval by the government and all that. But hydrogen infrastructure is like taking an already impossible it's like, okay, you need to climb Mount Everest, and then you add hydrogen into it. Now you got to climb Mount Everest blindfolded. It's like, it's this incredibly expensive and deteriorating infrastructure. Shell closed all their hydrogen refueling stations, so there was not that many refueling stations, but now there's even less than there was a couple weeks ago. I would
disagree with that, because I'm actually seeing more and more every day. Well, on my route to work there, they are installing more and more in the Bay Area, which, to be fair, is the Bay Area. It is anecdotal.
It's
I
not
agree.
Stats. If they're closing them across the country. I would have
to look at it, but I am seeing more and more at different gas stations, because it makes sense to just install it at the gas station, because why would you put it somewhere else where there's not a convenience store?
But who's installing them?
Some company that is paying, maybe not Shell, but I think the company or the gas station was Loop or Alliance. I think Alliance is the one I'm thinking of. They have the gas station typical setup, but in between the two stalls where you pull up to it, there is a hydrogen fueling stall there. And then they added a big refueling tank next to the building. Thankfully not under it, but next to it. So that way they could easily get the hydrogen in there. And I don't know how it runs. I've only seen it in person once when I was filling up the truck there, when I had to go to work with the truck. But I agree with you. Putting money into hydrogen transportation for the everyday commuter is not a good idea. I think you're much better off taking the route that Nikola Motors is trying to make right now, or Nikola Corporation, I forget their specific name.
I struggle with that argument, but that's a whole nother can of worms we can get into. Well, but at least for the argument of the pickup truck, like a consumer-owned pickup truck, it's particularly difficult and expensive, and I'm not convinced there's any fuel cells in those prototypes. I saw no evidence to suggest that they have any kind of functioning way to DC fast charge or go more than 40 miles an hour. I think they're very bare bones prototypes, because Nikola probably quit working on them before they were finished, and now he's saying they're software things. I don't think Nikola's going to write software for this guy's YouTube channel. Like, that doesn't.
No, he's going to have to build up his own software, and either he relies on third-party tech, or he somehow gets some software engineers to write up a decent-looking UI, or even hires some of the previous software engineers that made that original UI, if there was a original UI for the Badger, or any of the other products,
So long
contract
ago.
them out for it, in which I'm sure that they'd be more than happy to if they're getting paid a decent amount from Heavy D. But yeah, I agree. There's no evidence that was shown in that video that they have hydrogen technology in this. The only thing that was shown was a half-open fuel door, whether that was a charging port door or something else, or it
I
was just a
think
dummy door.
based on previous videos from his channel, it's fairly likely that he's not going to get any support or help from the Nikola company. And he's just going to modify it like he modifies lots of other vehicles on his channel and say, well, this is technically the Badger and I modified it, or because I couldn't get the battery to work, we put a V8 in there. Now it's a gas truck and it's really cool because I helped with the design of it or something. You know, I don't see it being much more than just a cool home project for a channel. I don't think this is turning into anything we're going to see on the road. And I wonder what the closest hydrogen station is to his headquarters.
I believe he's based in the Salt Lake City area, so unsure.
I don't know if there's much out there, to be honest. Most of the hydrogen stations are all in California.
They do a lot of mining up there in Salt Lake City, or at least they used to. They used to drill into the eastern mountains or the mountains east of Salt Lake City. But I don't think any of that was hydrogen. I'm pretty sure that was a lot of ore and minerals that they were extracting out of there. So all in all, I thought the video was confusing and entertaining and exciting.
I agree.
That there are physical things, whether he made them himself in the last year or so, or if he indeed is being genuine on the fact that they were built back in 2020 and then were just shoved in a closet. I do think that the shells have existed since 2020 because of the tweet that I shared with you earlier, or we talked about earlier, where the dealer sales training representatives came, and they had the Blue Badger in their building just sitting off to the side in the photo. So the shells, or at least the chassis, did exist. In terms of them actually being functioning prototypes, we don't know. But all in all, it was a very entertaining video. I'm very looking forward to seeing what Heavy D does with them. But I share your sentiment of, I don't think this is an announcement of Badger production happening in the next decade unless he makes some very big strides in partnering with a legacy automotive company or finding some billionaire that's willing to fund it, just like how VinFast has with their vehicles, where they're able to just throw money at the problem and somehow get it to market.
I just don't understand any hype around it. Nothing about the truck seems very noteworthy or interesting. I'm looking at a map. I found a hydrogen fuel cell map of the country.
Hydrogen fueling station map.
Yeah.
Okay.
And there is not a single station in the state of Utah or Nevada. So it's...
Well, hopefully he has a fuel station at home.
And, you know, most people can attest from all of the losses involved with electrolysis that hydrogen costs more than gasoline. So good luck trying to convince people to stop buying gasoline trucks if you have to pay more to refuel a hydrogen one. And there's way less refueling stations. So, yeah, it's a dead idea from the start. I think you'll get some fun modified YouTube videos out of it. But I am hesitant to say it's real. I think there's a lot of weight behind that.
The prototypes are real. I don't think the everything else attached to that results in a product that people can buy in a mass-produced sense. I think someone could probably pay him for it. That's a totally different thing compared to, I'll sell you my Toyota Corolla that I added a spoiler to.
We don't even know if it's street legal, technically.
He was driving it on side streets, and you put up a pretty good statement or comment as well of, does it even go above a certain speed or not, in which it may or may not, based off of what tech is in there, whether it's got some decent motors in there for propulsion to a certain speed, or if it's maybe some weak hardware that they've got under the hood just to make sure that it can roll off of a trailer
Right.
and then look very pretty.
I think it's quite possible that the hardware they put inside it was just enough to get it to roll onto a stage.
And for people to look inside.
Yeah, and look around, but not much more than that. So
sure,
it's funny.
Yeah,
it's funny
it
to watch.
It shows that Nikola was somewhat serious about it. It's just it didn't pan out, which is fine. I think, like we mentioned before, they're in a better place, even though that the stock's terrible, engineering wise, and or what they've, I guess, where their effort has gone is a lot more productive than where it was back in 2020.
Yes. I think what you're telling me is that I should scoop up as much Nikola shares as I can so that I can vote for the next few board members.
The next few. Yeah, who knows whatever's going on there politically with
It'd be a
trying to get on the board.
Place to be a fly on the wall, just to hear what the board's discussions are like these days. I just saw an article saying that the Nikola rejected Trevor Milton's plan to add 5 board members. So I think that's pretty clear. The board knows they need to distance themselves from Trevor as much as possible, which I agree is a smart move. And I'm grateful that they're not unveiling a bunch of crap. I'm grateful that they've just been all hands on deck on how do we deliver, how do we just service our vehicles, make products that people want to buy and want to drive, and they should. That's a great call. I would say the only other thing I would recommend is rebranding the name. The name. I don't think they should call it Nikola. Personally, find whoever invented the fuel cell and name it after him or something. But the whole Nikola Tesla thing is just way too much weird association, and there's already a bunch of negative brand power. We talked about how meaningful brand power is, and right now Nikola is associated, which Heavy D kind of acknowledges in his video, rolling trucks down hills, plugging them in from underneath the stage and claiming they're self-powered. There's a lot of negative association with this company, and I think a rebrand and kind of just a rethinking of just like, that's not who we are anymore. We're a new company under new leadership, and we're not going to make promises we can't keep, and we're just going to focus on our semi-trucks and the trucking industry. It's like, that's fine. They're doing fine without him.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that last statement. They are definitely doing fine. I mean, it's not looking good stock-wise, but in terms of delivering products to their customers, they are doing that, and they are supporting them as best as they can. Mm-hmm. And it seems like they're putting effort towards that. I looked up the inventor of the fuel cell, and it was first invented in 1838 by a Sir William Grove. I don't think Grove Corporation or Grove Motors rolls off the tongue as well as Nikola Motors or Nikola Corporation. I think, in my opinion,
maybe Grove without Nikola, the E.
Grove. Grok.
I don't know. There's got this whole Nikola, whatever it's pronounced like.
I think sticking with Nikola is probably a better bet, because even though it was bad press, people know of the name Nikola and they will look it up and then find, oh, they're still around, they're still a thing, and they might have their negative stigma towards it, but at least it doesn't look like Nikola's trying to hide behind a new name. Even though it probably is best to move on from that darker past, I think that negative press is still press for them, and right now they really need the recognition to show that they are a player in the game. So using that to their advantage might be the way to go for at least right now, maybe in a couple years.
I don't know. I think not all press is good press, especially for a hydrogen company that got attacked by Hindenburg. The irony is just so beautiful. Maybe call it Zeppelin or something. I don't know. Something with hydrogen rather than, if you're going to be the hydrogen company, maybe they're not. Maybe they're going to slowly realize this is way too expensive. Let's just be the electric company. I don't know. When there's such a big company like Tesla, and then you call yourselves Nikola, I think you're always going to be associated as the knockoff, like the copycat. Whereas I don't know. It'd be like if Samsung called themselves banana or something, or pear instead of apple. It's like you're always going to be looked at as this clone. Like if you're
Yeah.
too close in name.
Maybe, but how many people know of Nikola Tesla? They know of the company Tesla, and they might know the company Nikola, but they might not know the history behind what those names were and which was one guy.
That might be true. I'd be kind of surprised if anyone who knew about Nikola the company didn't know about Nikola Tesla, but because Nikola the company's kind of niche, it's very hard to find someone on the street that would know about that.
It's hard to
Unless
find
you're
someone on the street, Drew, to tell you an accurate tale of what wars the US have fought and when.
right. No, it's true. But a lot of
So
people
for
know
them
Tesla
to
and don't know about Nikola Tesla, but
right.
very
And
few people know about
maybe
just
this all kind
Nikola.
of goes full circle is just how to structure your brand, how to stand out. People
Hmm.
know of Rivian because they have gamed their brand around a certain ethos
Hmm.
and something that is very exciting and adventurous.
Yeah.
And it's more positive, where others like Nikola or Tesla, it's a little bit on the colder side. You associate it with, at least with Tesla, it's that one EV that you see everywhere.
Hmm.
But accelerating the world to sustainable energy, it's a noble goal, but it's hard to get excited about that versus keeping the world. I forget if Rivian's their slogan is keeping the world adventurous, but that's a lot easier to back with the styling that they attribute with their vehicles rather than what some other brands attempt to do.
Yeah. That's fair.
Right.
Well, do you have any closing thoughts or other things we should talk about before we wrap up?
We got not too long until the R2 comes out.
Oh, yeah,
Do you
that's like
have
a week or
any,
two.
I guess, quick predictions on your mind of? It seems like it's going to be an SUV. Just for the time being, it's not going to have a truck component anytime soon.
Yeah, RJ, I think, confirmed that on the earnings call. They said they're not going to unveil like future models on the R2. They're just going to focus on the R2S, which is good. I think they should keep it simple, keep it
Right.
manufacturable. From what I've gathered, it seems like it's not going to look very different from the R1S, which on one hand, I'd say that's good because people love the R1S and just making a cheaper version is probably going to sell really well. But on the other hand, concerns me because they're already facing some slumps in demand with the R1 line. So I hope they don't find themselves in an Osborne situation where a bunch of people hold off on the R1 vehicles because they're waiting for the R2, knowing they'll be much cheaper and more affordable and probably have NACS and everything. So I'm cautiously optimistic, but I do think while Rivian's in a really bad state right now, I think it's going to get worse. I don't think the stock has gone as low as it's going to go. Personally, not investment advice, but I think right before and right after, actually, during that initial ramp up of R2 deliveries, they're going to be burning a lot of money, and they're not going to have much cash. It's going to
Hmm.
be they're going to be very close to dying. I think they'll pull it off personally, but it's going to be really close.
It's interesting that you say that because I believe they announced in their either 2023 earnings or Q4 2023 earnings that they
Hmm.
project that they'll be gross positive in cash flow, I believe, at the end of the year.
Gross profit, not
Gross
net
profit,
profit.
sorry.
So right.
Okay.
That's a good sign for the R1 vehicles because you need to get to a point where the more cars you sell, the more money you make. Right now, they're in the opposite, which is the more cars they sell, the more money they lose. Not good. I was glad to hear that about the whole factory shutdown halfway through the year, and they're gonna use that time to iron out the assembly line. And but um,
Do you think
still,
it was a
that
good move to fire a lot of those salaried workers for the sake of financial and uh, whatever else efficiencies in terms of putting more responsibility on a single person, I guess, or a lot more task on or a lot more work for a single person rather than divvying it up between what used to be two people doing that task.
It's probably the hardest decision any company has to make, whether or not to lay off salaried employees, because that's people's livelihoods and a lot of people that really love the brand and have poured their hearts and souls into it. I'm sure it wasn't an easy decision, but you have to remember, when you're burning cash as fast as they are, you could lose 10% now, or you could lose 100% in a few years. And I think they're making the right decision to say, it's going to hurt and it's going to be sad for a lot of people. And sure, there's probably going to be added responsibility to the people there. But sometimes, especially right now, when they're in this cash burn era and this nosedive, they really have to cut out the fat, figure out where the additional expense is, or they won't make it. And I think they're focused on making it and figuring out how to stay afloat, and hopefully long term they get to expand their workforce and grow the company once they're more profitable and have that more disposable income. But it's sad.
I think that's more guaranteed when the Georgia plant comes online. It might be one of those ironic situations where one of these workers was laid off this year, and then they come back to work for Rivian next year at the Georgia plant to make the R2.
Yeah. I don't know if the assembly workers are salaried or hourly. They might be considered a different category.
From at least what I can most likely infer, they're probably going to have a few engineers, some salaried workers in the factory, just to keep a close eye on a few things and change.
Right.
Manufacturing engineers are a thing. And their job is to try to make sure that everything looks good. I guess there's production line workers or engineers as well. Well, not official title, but there are those roles that can easily reappear in Rivian's future with the Georgia plant. So I like that idea, is that it's a bummer that they have to get laid off now, but there is the opportunity to come back if they still love the brand and can easily forgive that decision, knowing that my laying off of work in 2024 resulted in a job in 2025 onward, rather than a more riskier situation where the company might not survive. But again, who knows if that efficiency gain will be meaningful in a cash flow, or I guess just cash potential way for the next couple of years. Hindsight will, I guess, tell us.
Well, it's usually kind of the biggest impact, because employees and salaries are oftentimes some of the most expensive things, especially for a lot of the salaried workforce being in R&D or in marketing and that kind of stuff. That's, a lot of the time the biggest way or the fastest way to cut a budget down is getting rid of employees, but it's not easy. It's not a fun thing to cut down on. So my hopes for the R2 is that when they unveil it, while they talk about the capabilities and the advantages and what features it'll have, they also talk about, here's how it'll be more mass producible. Here's some things we're going to do to streamline production, or this design will allow us to build hundreds of thousands per year, because they've said that the R2 is actually going to go in Europe and overseas. It's not just going to be in the US like the R1 is.
Very exciting.
So I hope that there's a big manufacturing efficiency focus on the unveil. But I mean, that would give me more confidence if it's just, look at all the cool features, bells and whistles, all these paint options and all these, the interior has all this stuff. If it gets all into that, I'm just going to get more worried about, this sounds really expensive and hard to build, and how are you going to...
Right.
But what Canoe has taught me is that it's much harder to kill these startups than people think.
They can stick around for a while.
Canoe on paper should have been dead months ago, but they're still here. It's like this could get really bad and they could still be around making cars. So
hey, when you're getting a couple extra bucks for 5 USPS vehicles, that's all you need.
Oh my god, I'm looking at Canoe stock right now. It's so bad. Ugh.
We're both in the mess, man. We're
It's
both in the
like
mess.
98, basically 99% of the value is gone. Wow, that was a donation I gave to them, basically.
I really hope they make it. They are one of those exciting brands that has
Ugh.
gone to such cost-cutting measures just to try to survive. And such a weird history with them. I guess my last thing is hats off to Stellantis for finally saying that they're going to be adopting the NACS port. But also in a very confusing way of not mentioning that they will have supercharging access. It's just that they will have the possibility of plugging into a supercharger because they have that port, but without saying that they're going to be... What I'm getting is there's no deal mentioned with Tesla on if you could plug in your 1500 rev or your Wagoneer EV.
That was funny.
Into a supercharger.
I wonder what the thought process is there. Like, is it something about NACS is, we've heard it's going to be adopted by the other charging providers too. Electrify America is going to have it. ChargePoint's going to have it. EVgo, all these other companies are going to have it. So do you need Tesla's permission to adopt NACS if it's an official open standard now adopted by the SAE? Maybe they're going the route of, well, it's just NACS, but no superchargers. I don't know. Maybe they're hoping superchargers get to the point where they're so open that it doesn't, Tesla doesn't have to sign off on it. It's literally just, well, the plug fits and you just download an app and activate it, and who cares what the car is? It just receives the power. That's kind of how it should work. You don't need permission from the gas stations to build a gas vehicle, right? You can just...
It felt more like a more mature post or newsroom compared to, we're partnering with Tesla to do this. Instead, we're adopting this standard. And maybe that's what the future is for a lot of the other brands that have yet to, such as... I've got a wonderful list in front of me that I remade, but like DMC, Lotus, Suzuki, VinFast. I don't know if they have or have not. I haven't seen any posts on whether they have or not. Faraday Future, Hennessy, Rimac. Maybe that's what the future looks like for them if they are in the U.S. market, want to make vehicles, and want to have access to either the supercharging network or just be on that standard, and which it seems like everyone's jumping on. They just take the more vague but mature statement, like Stellantis just saying, "Yeah, we're adopting the NACS port."
You kind of have to at this point. Everybody else is doing it, and after a certain number of years, there just won't be CCS plugs around. So it's like, do you want to sell EVs here? Yes. Okay. Well, here's the port. Whether you use Tesla or not, that's the port. You gotta get on with it. So I'm glad. It's a great port. It's a lovely shape.
It just makes me and my wife confused on if we end up getting a Ram charger or a 1500 rev 5 to 10 to 15 years from now or whatever, however long.
Well, the charger you just plug from home, right? Mostly. And then you'll get gas when you do the long distance.
The funny part as well is maybe we will just never use that port in terms of at a public charging station. It might just be used at home because it will be, I drive 20 miles and around town and then drive back, and that's all I need.
They said like it's 100 kilowatt hour pack, so that should be plenty. That should be at least like 200 miles of range, I think, with that aerodynamic.
I've forgotten the details on I've forgotten the details on the Ram charger and the 1500 rev on what range. The rev should be 500 100.
It's
500
like 600
miles.
The charger is like 600.
The Ram charger is 690 combined. I just forget the specifics on the battery inside the Ram charger along with the range. I need to refamiliarize myself with it. But maybe that's a sign that time to end the podcast so that way I can go look it up and eliminate that unknown. We'll be back. Yeah, we're not quitting the podcast entirely. As you can tell, We've done it last week without Drew. We've done it this week without Randy. Hopefully we don't do it next week without me, but if so, we're pretty much on par with the pattern right now.
Seems to be what's happening, but
it's a rocky start of the year, but if this podcast shows anything, we're dedicated to giving you, the audience, the content that you've been asking for the last 2 months.
We're not giving up like Canoe.
They haven't given up either.
That's what I mean. We're like Canoe. We haven't given up.
Okay, I understand what you're getting at. Cool.
All right. Thanks all for watching and listening. We'll see you next week. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.